How am I possibly meant to sleep without the covers completely pulled over me after watching The Well, which is of course the topic of today's review and discussion. This review is gonna have a lot of spoilers, so if you don't want to hear them, click off now. But this episode's existence as a sequel was not a surprise to me, but I was really surprised about how I ended up feeling about it. For those not already familiar with my madness, a couple weeks before this season aired, I had my cats and a percentile die predict how good this episode will be, so let's take a look and see what they predicted. Kevin predicted that the episode would maybe be really good. The percentile die predicted the episode would be a 70 out of 100. I think the predictions for this episode wound up pretty accurate. I will say, when I first heard the rumors about this episode being a sequel to Midnight, there was a lot that worried me, and as much as I try not to do this, I feel like I was setting myself up expecting disappointment. Mainly like with any sequel, I was really concerned that it would be rehashing the same thing as Midnight, that the plot and the Midnight entity would be the same, and then I also worried that Ncuti wouldn't get his own chance to shine because he would be in David Tennant's shadow from his performance in Midnight. I was also concerned that it would be too similar because in that instance I would have felt like it took the place of a different, more unique story, which would be nice considering the limited amount of episodes that we have. But I think it ended up working out quite well, especially considering the traps that sequels can often fall into. I am going to start by talking about Belinda and then a bit about her relationship with the Doctor. We didn't see a lot of pushback or resistance to TARDIS life from Belinda in this episode, but it kind of does feel like a natural progression. From the first scene of them post-Lux, I get the feeling that she shifted, not quite into resignation, but I certainly think, especially after this episode when the soldiers didn't recognize the Earth or the human race, I think she has really shifted into recognizing that she is fully along for this ride and she has to be if she wants to get home. Not only that, but she might not have a home to get back to. So I think it's all starting to become very real for her, which is maybe why she's a bit more along for the ride. But in general, Belinda continues to be an incredible companion. I love how intelligent she is, how compassionate she is, and I also really do like that her skills and her attitude as a nurse come into play a lot. Her and the Doctor continue to be a great duo, although I will say I was a bit surprised that he wasn't like more protective or at least more resistant when Shia's plan to shoot Belinda came up. Part of me does also wish that the Doctor had more to do in general, and it did feel like, especially with the Doctor, that same unsettling terror wasn't quite invoked as much as I felt it was with Midnight. But I still think Ncuti does a really good job with it. And since the entity behaves and seems to just exist in such a completely different way to the original Midnight entity, I think it makes sense that the terror would feel different because it's not some unknown thing. Like, the Doctor recognizes it now. And it's also just a completely different setting and vibe because before, you know, it was like a fun little tour gone wrong and then they're facing terror as regular civilians. Now it's like trained soldiers who are visiting a mining place that they know it has been under siege and something bad has happened. So they're a bit more prepared to face a terror, and that might be why the vibes are just different, I guess. The use of sign language and captions in this episode was brilliant. I love that the Doctor was able to communicate in sign language first and foremost because it did feel so unrealistic when the 12th Doctor was unable to do that. It's also really nice to see futuristic technology and even laws adapt to assist those with disabilities rather than there being some excuse about how advancements have erased or cured disabilities, which is always gross. I think it was quite interesting how Alice's disability ended up fitting into the story, and Rose Ayling-Ellis, I believe is how you pronounce her name, did a great job playing Alice in the first place. Midnight Entity has always scared the out of me, and I am so happy to say that it continued to do so, just in a completely different way. Literally did not turn off any lights. After watching this episode, I could not bring myself to. I am scared pretty easily though, so the bar might be low. It's hard for me to tell. One thing that made me nervous while watching is the entity was described as coming out of the well laughing, And then later, the Doctor described it as playing games. And I was so nervous that they were suddenly going to reveal that somehow the Midnight Entity was part of the Pantheon, which, I mean, in my opinion, that would have cheapened Midnight retroactively and also would have messed with this episode, because the Midnight Entity is just such a great monster on its own. So I was scared about them suddenly pulling it into this big, larger scheme of things. I guess there's still a risk that they might reveal it's part of the Pantheon, but I really hope not. Like, okay, it can laugh, it can chuckle even, but it better not giggle. I'm unsure of how I feel about seeing the Midnight Entity. I think it's gonna turn a lot of people off of this episode, because for so many people, that's part of the terror, is that it's so mysterious and you can't even see it. But you don't really see it in this episode. Like, you see very quick flashes of it. Later on, you see a bit more of it coming out of the shadows. It kind of looks like it has, you know, a mouth with teeth, and, you know, it's moving a bit. But you don't fully see it. So, I don't know, I still feel like, for me at least, there's still some mystery there. There did seem to be some inconsistency with the whole don't go behind the host, you die at midnight rule. I did note a couple of times that characters were behind Alice and nothing seemed to happen, and then later on, when Shea presumably has the entity attached to her, the Doctor is behind her and nothing happens. My best guess with this is, like the Doctor said, the entity plays games. It has fun. So I really think that the whole going behind it midnight rule is kind of just something it probably made up to toy with its victims. I did find the changed abilities, or at least the behaviors of the entity, really interesting, and it helped boost the episode for me, because then I really didn't know what to expect from it, because it was so vastly different from what we saw before. Seen near the end as they're leaving the planet Midnight, and there's only 4 of them left, the Doctor, Belinda, Mo, and Shea, was really brilliant in my opinion, because you no longer have like a larger group of scared and impulsive soldiers who are kind of split between commanders. You have the most level-headed people that were on that whole excursion, and even then there's still kind of that moment where you can see them like turn to paranoia and anxiety when they realize it might still be among them. It's not a massive change, but it is enough to where Shea is considering a very impulsive, very risky move in shooting Belinda, whereas I feel like she wouldn't have made that same decision earlier in the episode. I know that she shoots the electrical cord, but there's a big difference between shooting electrics and shooting an actual person. I think it is interesting because paranoia and anxiety, you know, we have that phrase of like, you feel like you could never turn your back on someone. And in this episode, you literally can't turn your back on people because something bad might happen. The Midnight Entity is so evolved at this point and has clearly learned so much about the common fears that people have. Like, it's manifesting as something you see really quick out of the corner of your eye. It's manifesting as something you feel behind you, watching you. It's manifesting as distrust in others. Like, it just manifests as a scary in general. I'm really glad that the Midnight Entity wasn't truly destroyed or defeated, because that is part of the horror of the original episode, is that it's probably still out there. The mercury in the pipes bit felt clever, but it does raise a lot of questions, just because I know that diamonds are also pretty reflective, and it used to live on a planet full of diamonds, and then also, you know, obviously it doesn't truly defeat it, so I do kind of have questions about that bit, but I do also have theories about why that didn't work. Something else really scary about the episode is it did make me believe that there might be multiple of the Midnight Entity, or it might be able to split off, because to me, like, it fully implied that it's still on Alice, because when they get into the airlock, you only see 3 people, but the screen reads 4, and then obviously eventually it's part of Belinda, and then it's part of Mo, at least it's implied to be part of Mo at the end. I don't really think that the entity was ever on or a part of Shea or Shia. I really am gonna be so mad when I figure out how to pronounce her name. But I don't think it was ever truly on her, because like I said, there is a moment where her back is turned to the Doctor before she sacrifices herself, and nothing happens. And that could just be the entity, like, not playing that game anymore. But I don't know, I feel it in my soul that it was never on her, and I don't know how to feel about that, because she is such a cool, interesting character. I really liked her throughout the episode, And so I want her sacrifice to, like, mean something. And I don't want it to be for nothing, but it kind of was. So I don't know how to feel about that, because that makes me like the whole sacrifice bit a lot less, but also I do think it's still a good example of just the desperation and the lengths that the entity can push people to. I did a full deep dive into both Midnight and the Well to analyze the Midnight entity and to study and theorize a bit about its behaviors, its attributes, including why it might look the way that it does. So much. And I also think I found similarities with another Doctor Who monster. So if you're at all interested, please check it out. I'm really proud of it. I really think I might have come up with some really cool theories, and I will definitely link the video either above or below, wherever, so that you can check it out. As always with Doctor Who, the crew did an amazing job building this world, and just the sets and designs and everything were incredible. Like, the detail that went into it, you just feel fully immersed in the setting. Like, all of it was so great. I did feel that the music was a bit much at times, and I think it might have helped with the atmosphere a bit more if we were just given silence and, you know, anxiety sort of fills in those blanks. But, I mean, it was still good, and I do think it helped the creepy factor. Altogether, I felt like The Well was another great entry in what has been a good streak for Doctor Who this season. The main thing for me is that I do feel the episode was able to escape the pit that a lot of sequels fall into by being too similar, because it did come up with new ways for the entity to behave and exist. And then obviously the Doctor and the crew trying to fight it, or I guess more accurately, deal with it or escape it, is a lot different as well. And everyone involved with the episode, whether they were on screen or behind it, did an incredible job of bringing this story to life. If you'd like to latch onto me like the Midnight entity, then, well, I'd actually prefer that you take me out to dinner first, but subscribing to my channel would be great too, especially so then you can see my video analyzing the Midnight entity, if you so choose. I hope you're staying safe, happy, and healthy. I hope you have a great day, night, whatever time it is for you, and watch your back.